question from the chat box.
Okay, so my name is Wade. First off, I'm recording this possibly for my podcast, but also for Events Magazine online. So it's like a two-pronged thing.
Double dip.
And
Do it.
all right. So my first question is, what inspired you to create Shot in the Arm, and what was it like to have your focus shifted from the measles epidemic to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Excellent. So yeah, what inspired me was a question of, if measles was almost declared eliminated in 2000, why were we seeing record-breaking measles outbreaks in 2019? State of emergency in New York City, state of emergency in Washington State, measles outbreaks all across Europe. And the question was answered when I contacted Dr. Paul Offit, and he said, well, it's quite simple and heartbreaking that there are people out there spreading misinformation and disinformation, excuse me, about vaccines, specifically the MMR vaccine, that cause these outbreaks. It's convinced parents to be scared and stop vaccinating their children. And I thought, well, that's a heartbreaking and terrifying story. Let's dig in on this and see where it goes. So he introduced me to Dr. Fauci, and he introduced me to Dr. Peter Hotez. And so I was following the public health line of it, and wonderful nurses like Lima Marcus in the Orthodox Jewish community. But I also wanted to tell
nurses in the trenches of all health crises.
That's right, the people, the nurses in the trenches. But we wouldn't have a story if we didn't tell the other side of it, not other side of it in any false equivalency way. The other side of it are the people who are fomenting this fear and disinformation. And for our film, that was some of the icons in the anti-vax movement: Andrew Wakefield, Del Bigtree, and now Robert Kennedy Jr. So we thought we had a pretty interesting film, fascinating film, heartbreaking film, tragic film in 2019. And then COVID happened, and it just got more interesting and more fascinating. And we were forced to play the card of, what do we do from lockdown? And we tried to turn that into lemonade, and wanted to include my family just a little bit, as a little bit of the, like, all of us that are in this, and the other people I was interviewing remotely, getting snippets of their family. When Blima was sick and her kids' toys are strewn all over the place, and her being humble enough to share that, or Karen Ernst trying to do a Zoom for her podcast, and her internet's breaking down because her son's playing video games at the same time, and her yelling at him and saying, put your pants on, just like these moments of what we all live through. My daughter hitting, whipped cream directly into her mouth. So that was part of the pivot, but it was still the same story.
I want to do that, actually.
Whipped cream, oh yeah, whipped cream directly in the mouth. Only like an 11-year-old knows. She didn't hesitate. But the pivot, that was part of the pivot to this larger story that became a personal story.
So the film explores vaccine hesitancy. Could you share your thoughts on how this hesitancy has evolved over time, and what factors contribute to it in today's society?
Oh, solid question. I'm going to do the difference between skeptical and cynical. So the beginning of we can go way back in terms of vaccine hesitancy and distrust in science. But let's start just with Andrew Wakefield's fraudulent study in 1998, that he tried to make a connection between the MMR vaccine. So he successfully scared people, but there wasn't a scientifically valid reason to point between the MMR vaccine and autism. But it took 9 years for the study to be retracted and really see what a fraud he was, being hired by a law firm to use this evidence to then have the lawyers win lawsuits against vaccine makers. But in that time, the study traveled the world. His fraudulent study traveled the world, and it scared lots and lots of families. So a skeptical family that worried that, why is my child autistic? I have a nephew who was autistic, and thankfully my big sister never took any of the bait of disinformation around this. I think she would actually cause Jenny McCarthy harm because of the amount of disinformation and the actual pain she's caused the autistic community, because she stopped it from looking at these situations in a healthy way. That excuse me, that parent went from being skeptical and saying, oh, could this have caused harm to my child, to becoming more cynical when they're presented with the fact that it didn't cause that harm, and but you continue to believe in it, that's a much more cynical place. And now to jump all the way to where we are with disinformation and two sides of this in 2020, let's call it 2022, 2023, going into 2024, that it's become a poison of don't tell me what I want to believe is true.
Well, it's almost more of a political movement than it was in the past. I would say
it is political, and it's also it's personal. That if your tribe is political, or your tribe is this political, or your tribe is, I believe vaccines caused my child to become autistic. It's also a personal decision that you're saying, I don't want to listen to the overwhelming evidence. I want to make a decision. I want to make my own decisions, as the sign in the back of the car that we see in the film. Your health is not as important as my freedom, and which is just an awful way of looking at this situation. Freedom is important and public health is important. Why can't we have a more respectful, nuanced, and verifiable, truth-based conversation around that?
Sure.
And Wade, there's an interesting evolution of this where the anti-vaccine movement started in liberal centers. If you looked at the measles map, where the outbreaks were, they were in bastions of liberal thinking, where there was a distrust in medicines, in more broadly in big pharma, and the anti-vaccine movement coming through COVID morphed into a variety, or should I say it, how they say it with COVID, a new variant. There's a new variant of anti-vaccine thinking that manifested in the conservative community, where people are saying, you can't, to Scott's point with that bumper sticker or the scroll on the window, it's America and I'm free and you can't make me take a vaccine. That's a different anti-vax argument from, I'm worried this vaccine is going to make me sick. And so you had conservative right and liberal left people meeting on the same side of the fence, where previously they would have otherwise had nothing in common.
And I'm still waiting to get my magnetic powers.
Oh, yeah.
That so many people were talking about.
After the vaccine, yes.
I could thwart the X-Men then.
Now you're talking.
Magneto.
So, can you discuss the role of misinformation in driving vaccine hesitancy a little bit more?
Sure.
Or disinformation? I guess the two are separate things.
Yeah, no, thank you for distinguishing, because it is important. So misinformation is someone spreading information that is false, but they might not be doing it on purpose. Disinformation is when somebody is spreading false information and they're doing it with intent. And sadly, this film is probably more about disinformation than it is about misinformation. People that are spreading misinformation to cause harm and to benefit themselves and things like that. So it's had a,
I disagree with Scott on that.
we can cut this out, right?
No.
No, this is all staying in.
Little joke. It's a joke, everybody. Stay with it.
No, I believe that the anti-vax leaders are so embedded that psychologically they completely believe what they're saying. And maybe I'm only saying that because I don't want to believe the alternative, because the alternative is they don't believe what they're saying, but that would make them just abject models of evil. And I don't really want to think that about them.
Oh, there's nuance there too. They're evil or selfish, self-serving, right? So.
One of the weird things I noticed in the movie is RFK Jr. often kind of walking back, the idea that he's anti-vax, even though he spends so much time giving anti-vax talking points. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've got it. If you ever get to interview him, Wade, he loves to say, I'm not anti-vax. I'm not anti-vax. If they're saying that, they want to corner me or make me look crazy. I'm just for safe vaccines. So the follow-up question to that, Wade, and I ask in the film, is okay, if you're not anti-vax, tell us the vaccines you believe in.
Yeah.
And he goes like this. So you're anti-vax. So it's but I can't believe how few journalists have kind of tried to get him to really answer that question, because he's an obviously extremely skilled and manipulative communicator.
Yeah. So what are some of the most common misconceptions you've encountered during your research for the documentary?
Just around vaccines?
Yeah. Or I
Yeah.
suppose anything that really seems relevant
Great.
to the
So,
movie.
well, as we said, we've talked about already, obviously there's the misconception by some that the MMR vaccine could cause your child to become autistic, and there's absolutely no evidence of that. There's been hundreds of studies to show that it isn't true. But I would say that the more shocking things that have surprised me is how easy it is to get caught up in our own biases tribally and onward, and how hard it is to check ourselves sometimes. And I say us, right? All of us have to think about that, the need to check ourselves. So I think that's been one of the most shocking and sad, but also necessary parts of this story.
Yep. The film, it has both public officials, health officials being interviewed, and anti-vax activists. What were some of the most surprising or enlightening perspectives you encountered during those interviews?
I'd like to slip in there that I was impressed. Just like I said, was script consultant here, so my role was not to offer medical advice, but to offer advice on how to communicate the science methods and tools and principles to the audience, folded into these story arcs that Scott put in. I would say that the so the crux of that question was what again?
Surprises.
Surprise, yes. So what I wouldn't say I was surprised, I was delighted by the level of accessibility and compassion expressed by the medical professionals that Scott obtained for this film. It would have been easy to have gotten doctors say, "Oh, people are just idiots." You could have gotten doctors like that.
Yeah.
But this collection of doctors, and especially the nurses, had such compassion for those who were duped that should I say that surprised me? I guess it did. It surprised me how consistent that posture was.
Good word.
Moving back and forth and among the doctors and nurses.
It's easier to be consistent when you're telling the truth. That's what we see in Robert Kennedy Jr. You see him saying, "Oh my God, I keep telling myself that I didn't lie in that situation around Samoa," but you can see him just like suffering from how hard it is to, what's the term? What a tangled web we weave when we attempt to deceive. I got it slightly wrong. You probably have it right. Hit me. Oh, what a tangled web we weave if our intent is to deceive. Anyway. So sorry, Wade, we got sidetracked.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. So as we still grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic, how has the cultural zeitgeist around vaccines shifted, and what lessons can we learn from previous epidemics and vaccine campaigns?
Ooh, big questions.
Yeah, that's a big question, man.
I would say I'm going to go to the zeitgeist of it. We have been very honored to see the film be seen as a zeitgeist film. There's some people that want to say, "Oh, it's a COVID movie" on its surface. They see the trailer and like, "Oh, it's going to be a COVID movie." They read a little bit about it's going to be a COVID movie, and that it's bigger than a COVID movie. This is what people have been telling us by their response to it, that it's a movie. It is a movie about our zeitgeist. It's a movie about the dangers of disinformation, selfishness, tribalism, to the foundations of our country and even our planet, that destroy democracy, can destroy our social contract and decency. And I've come to use the term not just corrupt, but corrosive. It can be a corrosive quality. But now let's flip that and go to the upside of that there are more people that do trust in science, that have the humility of the nurses that Neil is referencing, that can check themselves and be humble enough to say, "I'm not a perfect nurse, I'm doing the best that I can." And I hope we're living through a bump in our trust and respect for verifiable truth, the social contract and decency. And we're
A
going
bump in the road.
a bump
that
in
we're
the
still
road.
moving.
Yeah, that we're going to come to the other side of this. And that's what I hope. And my hope is based on that there are more people that are decent than there are that are awful.
Sure. Well, has it been 17 minutes already or something?
Yeah.
That time flew by pretty fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you did
Yeah.
good questions.
So do you have, well, I'll throw a curveball your way. Once it's Halloween coming up, do you have any favorite horror movies?
Ooh, one of my favorites, and Neil, I'll probably have more. One of my favorites has always been American Werewolf in London, because
Oh, I love that movie.
because of the genre, because it mixes the genres so beautifully, right? That it starts off as a knucklehead indie buddy movie and then goes full horror and can go back and forth between those two so successfully that clearly I'm gonna forget her name, the woman who did Cocaine Bear, which I just recently saw, but clearly seemed to be inspired by that, getting that mix. I love films that succeed at mixing genres. Neil, your favorite?
Well, I have two. One of them I didn't even see in its entirety, but the thought of it never left my mind.
Wow.
Was the title of it called Wolfen?
Oh, probably. I've actually never seen that one, but I'm
Okay.
aware.
Again, it was a lower budget film, as so many of these are. I don't remember where it took place, but
1981, yes.
yeah. So Wolfen, it was about a species of intelligent wolves that ate homeless people
Oh God.
for
Wow.
their survival, but only if you were homeless. So no one would actually miss them. That was the state of the world at the time, and maybe even today. So, and then the city council wanted to get rid of them because they're a menace. And one of the wolves like went into the city council and just it was surreal, because it was like you didn't know what the wolves would do next, but at the end you kind of sided with the wolves. They're just trying to live like anybody else is trying to live. So I don't know that it's a horror movie genre, but just the idea that these were highly intelligent. I don't mean intelligent in the way we speak of other species that are not human. They were more intelligent than humans. Okay. And so it was, how did we interact with this species? That's right. But my number one scariest movie, which neither of you could possibly agree with, was Get Out.
Oh,
The reason why you can't agree with it,
it's an excellent film.
because all I can say is everything portrayed in that film happened to me.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've had white people come up to me, touch my muscles and say, gee, I wish I had muscles just like your muscles. What? Gee, I wish I could do that just like you.
You're so ripped. Yeah, you're so jacked.
Okay. And so, gee, I wish, and these are scenes played out within that film. Oh, I see you could run fast. I always wanted to run fast. And then all of these black people are brought in and their bodies are swapped out with their brains. And to me, that was completely horrifying.
Yeah.
It was horrifying. You're pointing out the subtext of why it's so horrifying. Yeah,
yes.
Brilliant film.
Precisely.
Well, there's overlap in what we like is that he brilliantly mixed genres and mixed subtext and mixed social commentary with horror and
right. Social commentary.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely.
Yeah, Wolfen had tons of social commentary.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch that now.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to watch it again Wade. Too.
What is one of your favorites, Wade?
I've always liked Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Okay.
Three.
That's probably one of my favorites.
All
3.
All right. Yeah. Go back. I'll go back. Well, thank you for taking the time, my friend.
Oh yeah.
How'd you like the movie?
Oh, which movie? Shot in the Arm. Well, of course I liked it. It was good. Yeah. I'm sure I'll watch it again. You know,
it's scary in its own way. Well, thank you for the time. We'll see you again.
Well, have a good day. Thanks.